Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Arizona Dreams. Subscribers, appreciate you. New viewers, subscribe so you get these awesome videos. Today we're going to do another comparison video since the last one was a pretty good hit. Today we're going to compare Detroit, Ann Arbor, Michigan areas to the Phoenix Valley and do something similar to what we did with the Phoenix, Houston scenario. So jumping right in, let's talk first about the weather. Average high in July is 83 degrees in Detroit. The average high in Phoenix in July, 105 degrees. It's a little warm. The weather here, as I've covered before, it's unbearably hot for about 3 months of the year. Some people will say 5. I've said before I like the heat. So for me, 3 months out of the year. Otherwise, it's 50s, 60s, 70s in the wintertime. Spring and fall, we get 80s, 90s. And towards the end of spring, we start to get towards the 100. And towards the beginning of fall, we're still kind of hitting the hundreds. The average low in January in Detroit, 19. The average low in Phoenix, 44. So we rarely get freezing temperatures in the wintertime. On the flip side, in Detroit and Ann Arbor, and just for the record, Ann Arbor is considered a suburb of Detroit. Don't ask me why, because there's a good distance between them. For that weather, it's the opposite, right? It's the typical Midwest Great Lakes weather. Detroit gets some of the snow effect stuff, and Ann Arbor sits kind of like in a valley almost and tends to have the weather sit on it. So snow, lots of snow. Winters can last for about 6 months, and I say that. I'm sure that there are people that will disagree with me, but that's the case. It can be pretty cold starting in right around October, but it's definitely cold by November, although they'll get those Indian summer type scenarios where it'll warm up for a few days, and it's a mixed bag. You never know what you're going to get. There's memes out there for I turn my heat on in the morning, then I got my AC on in the day, and then I got my heat on again at night. But again, for me, it's cold and there's a lot of snow. Phoenix has 77.8% less rainy days than Detroit, which also makes it kind of special when it does rain. Phoenix has 63.4 plus or minus more sunny days than Detroit. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. We thoroughly enjoy that here. So, and don't get me wrong, I love the Great Lakes, but the edge for me goes to Arizona because we get so much enjoyable weather for the majority of the year, and especially if you like heat. Natural disasters between the two. Phoenix doesn't really have a lot of natural disaster potential minus flooding. Phoenix, we do have monsoons. Certainly don't have that issue for the most part in Detroit. We have haboobs. On the flip side of that, Detroit, you've got tornadoes, you've got heavy rainstorms, and you've got snow here. So Phoenix is winning on the weather side for sure. Now let's talk about traffic. Ann Arbor for sure just crushes Phoenix. It's a simple fact, man. Ann Arbor is about 150,000, give or take. On game day, football game day, it's about 300,000. Yeah, the population doubles. But even then, traffic is not insane. They handle that game day traffic really well. It's just a simple lack of population there. In Detroit, traffic's really not that bad. And I'm sure that there are people there that will say, hey, we get our rush hours. Yeah, you do. But it's not to the extent of the cities that are big, like the Phoenix Valley area. So traffic, I'm going to give the edge to the Detroit Ann Arbor. Let's talk about road quality conditions. Michigan has had a really bad reputation, and this is the entire state, and Detroit is by far no exception, of poor road quality. Drive up 23, drive up 75, 94, 96. Now there's a lot of construction going on right now, so I can't speak to the state of how the roads are doing right now. They're probably in pretty good shape, but typically their roads are potholes and a lot of gravel and things that churn from a lot of semi-traffic and just a lot of wear and tear from the winter. The salt really destroys the pavement and does its damage to it. So the quality of the roads, I'm going to give the edge to Phoenix. I will say that there's a lot of debris on the Phoenix road, but still, the edge goes to the Phoenix Valley for sure. The side streets are fabulous. and the interstates are well maintained. It's just they're not cleaned regularly. So this might come as a shock to you. Michigan's insurance rates are higher than Arizona, so be prepared for that, and it's substantial, the difference, which was a nice surprise given that title costs are considerably more in Phoenix than they are in Michigan. So the next thing to talk about is economy, and just like I did with the other one, I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about the strength of their housing economy, and I'm going to talk about the strength of the economy. Talking about average home prices for a second, if you're specifically looking at Detroit as compared to Phoenix, you can get a home cheaper in Detroit. I got to kind of separate Detroit and Ann Arbor in this aspect. The housing in Ann Arbor is really strong. It is definitely a seller's market. We were surprised when we went from Arizona to Ann Arbor at how fast houses were just snapped up. It was crazy to me to see such a small area have houses that were getting easily their asking price and sometimes $20,000, $30,000 over their asking price, and war bids going, bidding wars going on for houses in Ann Arbor. It really depends on the suburb. I mean, there's Troy, Rochester, Dearborn. Some of those you're going to get some high demand just like you do in Ann Arbor, but some of them you're not. Now, Detroit proper, housing is still not very strong. You've seen a few years back, and I don't remember how long back it was, but you could buy houses for 10 grand and maybe even cheaper in Detroit because they were so run down, and they were betting on people coming in and hopefully refurbishing them. There is a revitalization happening in Detroit, but given the fact that Detroit's housing market is rough, I'm going to give the edge to Phoenix Valley for the housing and the fact that the pricing in that, it's more competitive. If you're looking for a cheap bargain, then they would go to Detroit. This is Detroit specifically compared to Phoenix specifically. Same thing can be said in the Phoenix area. You get up to Fountain Hills, Gilbert, Tempe. Tempe is landlocked. They brought in a bunch of new businesses. Their housing prices are jacking right now. Gilbert's growing a lot, so their housing prices are going up. Fountain Hills, they're landlocked, so their prices have always been pretty stably higher than the rest of the areas, and there's other ones out there. You go a little further out and you can certainly get a little cheaper again too. All right, now the economy. Everybody knows the woes of Detroit. Detroit thrives off of the automotive industry, and they still do for the most part. But that said, they've brought in casinos. They've got the Detroit Zoo, the Detroit Institute of Art, I believe it is, the Red Wings, Tiger Stadium, and the area around Red Wings. It's all being revitalized and it's coming along nicely. They have the Detroit Auto Show, which is drawing in some nice traffic. Little Caesars is headquartered there. I believe Quicken Loans is headquartered there. Like Little Caesars and Quicken Loans have been really proactive in trying to get their people to come into Detroit and live in Detroit. And so they're helping to stabilize that economy right now, especially with the ups and downs of the automotive market. But again, in Phoenix, our market's pretty stable. It's not as stable as Houston, which I've talked about in the other video, but it is stable. I can't really think of a major drop minus the housing crisis that happened back in 2010, 11, whatever it was. Then the economy was a little bit hit, right? Just like the rest of the nation. So I'm going to give the edge to Phoenix, and there's our favorite dog. Things to do. I just told you in Detroit you have the Red Wings, the Tigers. You can go see a Piston game, although it's technically outside, but it's still Detroit area. So they've got the professional sports. In Phoenix sports, you have the Cardinals, you have the Diamondbacks, you have the Suns, the Coyotes. We have ASU here in Phoenix. Ann Arbor has the University of Michigan. So you have that opportunity. University of Detroit's there. So if you like basketball, they're typically pretty good in basketball. So the sports scenes, they're about equal, especially if you're willing to drive back and forth between Detroit and Ann Arbor, because you can get all of the top division sports in Ann Arbor, or if you want to, you can drive up to Lansing, which technically is not part of the suburbs of Detroit, but you could go up there and see another Big Ten university and all their sports. Also, Phoenix has spring training. So in addition to all the sports that both sides have, we get a bunch of influx of teams here that you don't get to see in the Detroit area because they're coming away from all that cold weather to get out here and practice in the spring. Sports, I'm going to give Phoenix the edge. I think what really differentiates Detroit and Ann Arbor and the Phoenix Valley is so many attractions nearby. You've got the desert, mountains, so there's a lot of hiking opportunities. There's a lot of mountain biking opportunities. There's no mountains near Detroit. You know, Boyne Mountain, and that's really a hill. I like Boyne Mountain though. Golf here, yes, there's plenty of golf opportunities in Michigan, but there's far more here. You know, and again, the proximity to so many other things, if you're willing to drive a little bit, is just crazy in Phoenix. On the flip side, if you like natural water, Michigan has so many pretty lakes and so many rivers. I'm going to give the edge to Phoenix, but just know that there is a lot of opportunity going on in the Detroit and Ann Arbor area. There's a lot of opportunities to bike ride. There's a lot of opportunities to hike, especially around Ann Arbor. Maybe not as much for Detroit proper, but definitely Ann Arbor and the suburbs of Detroit. What's the potential of the income? Well, I can tell you from experience that we get paid better out here. How much better? Well, the median income for a household is about $50,000 plus or minus in Phoenix, and in the Detroit area, it's about $27,000. That's median, and that's Detroit. So don't get on me about all of the suburbs around it, because yes, you make better money out in Ann Arbor than you do in Detroit. Although, again, companies like Little Caesars and things like that that are headquartered in Detroit, Quicken Loans, they're paying better. They're still not on scale to what it is out here on the West Coast. I know Arizona's not technically West Coast, but it's out west. We pay more because we have to compete with Los Angeles, you know, San Francisco, Seattle, that whole actual coast, because they pay higher. I got one more thing to talk about. You're going to be shocked here. Not. Let's talk about crime and the percentage or whatever as in comparison to the United States average. So let's talk about the United States average first. According to what I was able to find, on average, violent crime in the United States is about 22.7, and property crime is about 35.4, plus or minus on both of those, so you can go do your looking up. Phoenix, violent crime, about 37. Detroit, about 94. Property crime, Detroit, 66. Phoenix, 52. So property crime, with the scale being 1 is low, 100 is high. Property crime is fairly relative between the two. I mean, it's different. You know, you're talking about 50 to 65, but violent crime. So if you're raising a family, I think you're gonna find, at least for Phoenix to Detroit, forget Ann Arbor, you're gonna find Phoenix is far safer as far as the risk of violent crime. I'm not slamming Detroit, but for me personally, the advantages that Phoenix has to offer currently outweigh Detroit. I will go back to Detroit to visit, but I don't ever see myself moving back. I think Phoenix wins. Let me know what your thoughts are. I hope you enjoyed this one. Give me the comments, and you know the drill. Subscribe, share, like, comments down below, ring the bell so that you get those alerts when the new videos come out, and otherwise just take care.